They laughed at her skin. They whispered when she walked by. To them, Amara wasn't just the new girl. She was the black girl in a mostly white school. Different, quiet, easy to target. Every day they mocked her hair, her voice, her silence. And when two boys hit her on the head while she sat on a chair, the whole class laughed like it was just another joke. But what they didn't know was that the girl they were mocking was a black belt in karate, trained for years to defend herself, but more importantly, to control her anger. That day, when her head throbbed and her vision blurred with rage, control broke, and the bullies were about to learn what happens when you push the wrong girl too far. The classroom smelled of chalk and dust, filled with lazy whispers and restless laughter. It was the last period of the day, the kind of hour where no one really cared to learn. Everyone wanted to go home. Everyone except Amara. She sat at the far end, her back straight, her notebooks perfectly aligned, eyes focused on the lesson that barely anyone else listened to. She was the only black student in the class. Quiet, polite, and almost invisible. At least she tried to be, but her silence made her stand out. Her skin tone, her braided hair, her calm voice. Everything about her became a reason for people to whisper, "Why does she talk like that? Look at her hair. Bet she thinks she's better than us." The comments weren't always loud, but Amara heard them. Every single one. She just didn't react. Her mother had always told her, strength isn't in your fists, it's in your peace. So she stayed peaceful, but peace doesn't last forever, especially when cruelty is entertained. At the back of the class sat Dylan and Mark, self-proclaimed kings of the school. They'd bullied nearly everyone at some point, but Amara's silence made her their favorite target. She didn't fight back. She didn't tattle. To them, she was perfect prey. During lunch, they'd mock her accent. In the hallway, they'd bump her shoulder. She ignored it all. But that afternoon, something shifted. The teacher was writing equations on the board. Back turned. The class buzzed with boredom. Mark leaned over to Dylan and whispered, "Let's see if she even reacts to this." Before anyone could stop them, Dylan walked up behind Amara's chair. He grinned, raised his hand, and smacked the back of her head. The sound echoed through the silent classroom. Her pen slipped from her fingers. The pages in her notebook trembled. A ripple of laughter rolled through the room. Mark chuckled. "Oops, didn't mean to hit that hard." Amara didn't move. She just stared at the floor, her breath steady. Inside her chest, her heart pounded, not from fear, but from something deeper. Something she'd tried for years to bury. Slowly, she turned her head. Her eyes locked on Dylan's. The laughter died almost instantly. Her gaze was steady and too calm, too cold. "Pick up my pen," she said quietly. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that silenced the entire class. Dylan blinked, confused. Mark snorted. "What did you say?" Amara's hand clenched into a fist under the desk. "I said," she repeated, voice like steel, "pick up my pen." The teacher turned around at the sound of her voice, frowning at the tension in the air. But before she could ask what happened, Amara stood up, slowly, gracefully, her posture straight, her eyes unwavering. For the first time since she'd joined the school, Amara wasn't invisible anymore. And no one, not even the bullies, malized. They had just awakened the side of her that had been sleeping for far too long. The room was heavy with silence. Every laugh had vanished, replaced by a sharp unease that even the walls could feel. Dylan stood there frozen, the smirk slipping off his face. Something about the way Amara stared at him made his stomach twist. It wasn't anger. Not the kind he'd seen before. It was something deeper. Cold, unflinching, unapologetic. The teacher, Mrs. Kellen, frowned. "What's going on here?" she asked, her chalk still in hand. No one answered. Mark nudged Dylan. "Say something, man." Dylan cleared his throat. "Nothing, ma'am. Just a joke." Amara's pen was still on the floor, lying between Dylan's shoes. Slowly, she crouched down, picked it up herself, and placed it gently on her desk. Not a single word came from her lips, but her silence said everything. Mrs. Kellen looked around. "If anyone thinks hitting another student is a joke, I'll remind you it's not tolerated here." Her voice was calm but firm. She went back to writing on the board, unaware of how deeply that moment had already carved itself into everyone's memory. When the bell rang, chairs screeched and backpacks zipped. Students rushed out, whispering as they passed Amara's desk. She didn't even cry. "She's creepy." She just stared at them. Dylan laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. "She's just weird," he muttered to Mark as they left. Probably too scared to do anything. But if he had looked back, he would have seen Amara's hands trembling, not from fear, but from restraint. After school, Amara walked home alone, her footsteps echoing against the quiet pavement. Her mind replayed the slap over and over, the laughter, the whispers, the sting on her scalp. Every breath burned with humiliation. At the small house she shared with her grandmother, she dropped her bag by the door. "Amara?" Her grandmother called from the kitchen. "You're early." Amara forced a smile. Yeah, school was fine. But her grandmother, Nana Joyce, wasn't easily fooled. Her wrinkled eyes narrowed. "You're clenching your fists, child. What happened?" Amara hesitated. Then the words slipped out, raw and shaky. "They hit me today. In class." The air seemed to stop. Nana Joyce slowly removed her glasses. "Who?" "Two boys. Dylan and Mark." For a moment, silence. Then Nana Joyce walked to a wooden cabinet in the corner and pulled out something wrapped in a faded white cloth. She unfolded it carefully, revealing a black belt frayed at the edges, with gold letters embroidered across it. "Joyce Kamara, 4th Dan." She looked at her granddaughter, her expression both proud and solemn. "I trained you for peace," she said quietly, "not to hide from pain." Amara's throat tightened. "I didn't want to fight. You always said—" "I said don't start a fight," her grandmother interrupted. "But if someone brings one to your doorstep, you finish it with discipline and honor." Amara touched the belt, her fingertips brushing the old threads. Memories flooded in, the dojo mats, her mother's laughter, the rhythm of her fists hitting the air. Her mother had been a martial artist too, strong and graceful, until the car crash that took her life when Amara was 10. Since then, Nana Joyce had carried her training forward, not to make Amara dangerous, but to make her unbreakable. Now, standing there, Amara realized what her grandmother meant. The belt wasn't just fabric. It was a reminder of who she truly was. Nana Joyce placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are your mother's daughter. Never forget that. They hit your head today. Don't let them live in your mind tomorrow." Amara nodded, her eyes burning with quiet resolve. That night, while the world slept, she stood barefoot in her backyard under the dim glow of the moon, her stance steady, her breathing calm. Each punch she threw sliced through the cold air with purpose. The pain in her heart began to turn into focus, her shame into strength. And as her final kick struck the air with a sharp snap, she whispered to herself, "They think I'm weak. Let them," because Amara wasn't planning to seek revenge. She was preparing for justice. Monday morning arrived with the usual chaos of the hallway. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, and laughter bouncing off the walls. But beneath the noise, whispers followed Amara wherever she went. "Hey, that's her!" The one who got hit. She just sat there. Amara could feel the stares burning into her back. She kept walking, books hugged close to her chest. Expression calm. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. She had trained her whole weekend, her body sore but her spirit centered. When she entered the classroom, Dylan and Mark were already there, feet up on their desks, trying too hard to look relaxed. The moment they saw her, their grins returned. "Well, look who survived," Dylan smirked. "Didn't think you'd show up." Amara said nothing. She took her seat, opened her notebook, and started writing. Mark snorted. "Oh, come on, don't ignore us, princess." The class chuckled. It was the same pattern, cruelty disguised as humor. But what no one noticed was how still Amara's hands were, how quiet her breathing had become. Mrs. Kellen entered, calling for attention, and the noise settled for a while. Lessons began, but Dylan couldn't resist. As soon as the teacher turned to the board, he crumpled a piece of paper and tossed it at Amara's head. It hit her shoulder and fell onto her desk. The word monkey was scrawled across it in black ink. For a heartbeat, Amara froze. Then she folded the paper neatly and slipped it into her bag without a word. The silence that followed made even Dylan uneasy. She didn't shout, didn't cry. She just absorbed it. And that scared him more than any reaction could have. After class, he cornered her near the lockers. Mark stood beside him, laughing. "Hey, you got no comeback?" Dylan said. "You just take it? Or do you need your mommy to fight for you?" That last word hit a place deep inside her. A place that had been sealed since the day she lost her mother. Amara's jaw tightened. She could feel the rage clawing its way up her chest. But she remembered her grandmother's voice. Discipline first, power second. She met Dylan's gaze, her voice steady. "You think strength is about who hits first, but real strength is knowing when not to." Mark laughed. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Amara leaned closer, her eyes locked on his. "Then you're about to learn the hard way." Before he could reply, the gym teacher's whistle blew from down the hall. Students rushed past them, heading toward physical training. Amara walked away calmly, leaving them stunned. In the gym, while others chatted and fooled around, She quietly tied her shoes and stretched. The coach called for warm-ups. Then, as if fate wanted to play its hand, he announced, "Today we'll do a quick sparring demonstration. Volunteers?" Dylan's hand shot up, grinning. "I'll go!" The coach nodded. "Good. Who wants to face him?" A hush fell. Then, slowly, Amara raised her hand. The class gasped. Dylan's grin faltered. He hadn't expected that. "You sure, Amara?" The coach asked. She nodded once. "Yes, sir." As they stepped into the center of the mat, the room buzzed with anticipation. Dylan smirked, trying to regain confidence. "Don't cry when I win, okay?" Amara didn't reply. She simply bowed, the traditional sign of respect. The coach blew the whistle. And in the next 3 seconds, everything changed. The gym fell silent, the kind of silence that makes even footsteps sound like thunder. Dylan stood on the mat, smirking, stretching his arms like he'd already won. Around them, students gathered in a circle, their whispers a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Is she crazy?" one girl muttered. "He's twice her size." Amara stood barefoot, her posture relaxed, her face unreadable. But those who looked closely noticed her stance. Balanced, centered, controlled. Not random. Not afraid. The coach raised his hand. "Ready?" Dylan cracked his knuckles. "Ready." Amara gave a slow nod. "Begin." Dylan lunged first, quick but sloppy, swinging his arm toward her shoulder. Amara sidestepped with fluid precision, his hand slicing through empty air. The crowd gasped. Before he could regain balance, she turned slightly. One movement, effortless, and his body stumbled forward. "Yo, that was luck," Mark yelled from the sidelines, trying to laugh off the tension. Dylan tried again, this time faster, his palm aimed straight for her chest. Amara ducked low, pivoted on one foot, and swept his legs out from under him. Thud! He hit the mat hard. The entire gym erupted in shock. The coach stepped forward, eyes wide. "Where did you learn that, Amara?" "Home," she said softly. Dylan scrambled up, his face red with embarrassment. "You think you're funny?" He hissed. He charged again, this time angrier, his movements wild and uncontrolled. Amara stood her ground until the last possible second, then spun, blocking his strike with her forearm and tapping his chest with a precise, lightning-fast palm strike that sent him stumbling backward. She didn't even hit hard, but the control, the timing, the technique, it was perfect. The kind of perfection that only comes from years of training. The room fell completely silent now. Even Mark's grin faded. The laughter, the mockery, all of it evaporated as everyone watched Dylan lying on the mat, breathing heavily, unable to comprehend what just happened. Amara stepped back and bowed, her eyes calm. "You should never hit someone weaker than you," she said, her voice steady but sharp as glass, "because one day they might not be weaker." The coach ended the match, both impressed and concerned. "That's enough." Amara nodded respectfully, picked up her towel and walked off the mat. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She simply left the gym in silence. The same silence she'd arrived in. But this time, it wasn't the silence of fear. It was power. When she passed by Mark, she looked him straight in the eye. "You're next if you keep following him." He swallowed hard. For once, Mark had no words. As Amara walked through the hallway afterward, she heard whispers again. But this time, they were different. "Did you see that?" She took him down in seconds. "She's a black belt or something." In a single afternoon, the label of quiet black girl had been rewritten. She wasn't their joke anymore. She was the girl who stood up. The girl who fought back, not out of anger but out of dignity. Still, as she sat alone in the locker room afterward, tying her shoes, her hands trembled. Not from fear, from the storm she'd kept inside for too long finally breaking free. Her reflection in the mirror stared back at her. Calm, strong, different, she whispered to herself. This isn't over yet. Because deep down she knew, bullies never stop after one fall. And the next time, they'd come back harder. But so would she. By the next morning, the whole school had seen the video. Someone had recorded the gym sparring session. The moment. Amara flipped Dylan to the mat. It was everywhere. Whispered about in hallways. Replayed on phones. Laughed at behind lockers. But the laughter wasn't aimed at her this time. It was aimed at him. Yo, Dylan got wrecked by the new girl. She didn't even break a sweat. She's a karate master or something, bro. Every whisper sliced into Dylan's pride. He walked through the halls with clenched fists, feeling the sting of humiliation burning through him. Mark trailed beside him, whispering, "Forget it, man. People will move on." But they didn't. By lunch, someone had even edited the video with dramatic music and slow motion effects. Dylan's fall looped again and again on social media. Bullied by a girl, the caption read. That was the moment something inside him snapped. I'm not letting her get away with this, he growled, slamming his tray down in the cafeteria. She wants to play tough? Fine. Mark looked uneasy. She's not like the others, bro. You saw what she did. I don't care what she is, Dylan barked. No one embarrasses me like that, no one. Meanwhile, across the room, Amara sat alone. The usual taunts were gone, replaced by stares, some fearful, some respectful, some confused. A few kids even smiled at her, whispering things like, "You were amazing," or "He deserved it." But Amara didn't smile back. Victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt heavy, lonely, because she hadn't wanted to hurt anyone, only to stop being hurt. After school, she walked home as the autumn wind scattered leaves around her feet. For the first time, she wasn't invisible anymore. But the attention didn't feel safe. It felt like a spotlight, one that made her a target again, only in a different way. At home, Nana Joyce was already waiting by the window. So, she said as Amara entered. The world knows now. Amara dropped her bag with a sigh. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Her grandmother smiled softly. Things rarely do. You stood your ground, child. There's no shame in that. I didn't want to humiliate him, Amara whispered. I just wanted him to stop. Nana nodded, understanding. The moment you stand up for yourself, you show people who they truly are. Some will respect it, others will hate it. But that's not your burden to carry. Amara wanted to believe her. But deep down, a shadow of dread crept in. She knew Dylan wasn't done. His pride wouldn't let it go. That night, as she lay in bed, a sharp ping from her phone lit up the room. She opened it. A message from an unknown number. You think you're special now? Wait till tomorrow. Amara's chest tightened. Her fingers hovered over the screen, then locked the phone. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Instead, she got out of bed, walked to the small training space her grandmother had set up years ago, and began to move. Slow, steady strikes through the air. Each motion calmed her mind, sharpened her senses, steadied her heart. She whispered, Fear won't control me. Outside, somewhere in the dark, Dylan and Mark were already planning something cruel. They'd lost their power in front of everyone. And in their anger, they were ready to cross a line no one should ever cross. But Amara wasn't the same girl she'd been last week. The quiet girl was gone. Now, what remained was a fighter, focused, prepared, and unafraid. The next day began like any other. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. Students filled the halls, laughter echoing, lockers slamming. But underneath the noise, something felt different. There was an edge in the air, a tension that hummed just beneath the surface. Amara felt it the moment she stepped through the school gates. The way people's eyes lingered a second too long, the hush that followed wherever she walked. She could feel something coming. She just didn't know what. At her locker, she noticed a folded note wedged between the vents. She opened it slowly. The handwriting was messy, rushed. Meet us behind the gym after class. We need to talk. Dylan. For a moment, she just stared at it. Every instinct in her body said it was a trap. But part of her, the part that refused to live in fear, whispered that maybe she needed to end this. By the time the final bell rang, the sky had turned gray. Clouds gathered like bruises. Amara tightened her backpack strap and walked toward the back of the gym. The place was empty, quiet except for the rustle of wind through the chain-link fence. She stood there waiting. Then came the footsteps. Dylan and Mark emerged from behind the bleachers, their faces shadowed and tense. Well, Dylan said, smirking, you actually showed up. I said I wanted to talk, Amara replied calmly. Not fight. Mark snorted. You already did that, remember? In front of the whole school. Dylan stepped closer. You made me look like a fool. You embarrassed me, Amara. Now it's your turn. He nodded toward the shadows. 3 more boys stepped out. Older ones from the senior grade. Broad shoulders. Angry faces. Amara's pulse quickened. You brought backup? Dylan grinned. Let's see your fancy moves now. The boys began to circle her, like wolves testing their prey. Her breathing slowed. Every muscle in her body aligned, her training whispering through her mind. Don't panic, observe, react. One of them lunged first, a shove meant to knock her down. She sidestepped, his momentum carrying him forward. Another grabbed her arm. She twisted, breaking free with a sharp movement. A third swung at her and she ducked, the fist slicing through air inches above her head. The fight was quick, messy, unbalanced, chaos wrapped in anger. She didn't strike to hurt. She struck to stop. Each movement was controlled, precise, just enough to defend herself. But when Dylan lunged from behind and yanked her hair, something inside her snapped. The memory of that first slap, the laughter, the humiliation, flashed in her mind. She spun, elbowing him hard in the chest. He stumbled back, gasping. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the empty space. "You don't get to touch me again." The others froze. Her eyes blazed, fierce, focused, unafraid. For a moment, no one moved. Then the sound of approaching footsteps cut through the tension. The school janitor turned the corner, eyes wide at the scene. "What on earth?" Dylan stepped back quickly, panic flashing across his face. "She attacked us!" he yelled. "She went crazy." Amara's mouth opened in disbelief. "That's not true." But it didn't matter. The janitor had already called for the principal. As the boys scattered, leaving her standing there, heart pounding, Amara realized she'd walked straight into a setup. By the time the teachers arrived, the story had already spread. Amara attacked them. No one mentioned the trap. No one mentioned self-defense. Just like that, the victim became the suspect. And as she sat in the principal's office later, her hands trembling, she realized this battle wasn't about fists anymore. It was about truth. And sometimes that's the hardest fight of all. The walls of the principal's office felt colder than usual. The clock ticked too loud, the silence too heavy. Amara sat with her head lowered, palms resting on her knees, while the principal, Mr. Harris, read from a report. "So," he said finally, removing his glasses, "you're telling me 5 boys attacked you, but somehow, you were the only one fighting?" Amara's throat tightened. "They ambushed me. I was defending myself," Mr. Harris sighed. "Amara, you're new here. You don't have a record, and that works in your favor. But there are witnesses saying you threw the first hit." "They're lying," she whispered. He looked at her with something close to sympathy, but not enough to matter. "We can't ignore multiple reports. Until we sort this out, you're suspended for 3 days." The words hit harder than any punch. Suspended. Her reputation, her peace, her dignity, all gone in a single decision. When she walked out of the office, students stared from every corner. Some whispered, others looked away. The video that once made her a hero was now replaced by rumors. Twisted stories about her being violent, dangerous, unstable. By the time she reached home, tears burned in her eyes. Nana Joyce was waiting by the porch, concern written across her face. "What happened, my child?" Amara dropped her bag and buried her face in her grandmother's shoulder. "They lied, Nana. They said I started it. And now I'm suspended." Nana Joyce held her close, her hand stroking Amara's hair. "Let them talk. Truth always finds its way through lies, even if it crawls." "But it's not fair," Amara said, her voice cracking. "I did everything right. I stayed calm. I didn't fight back until I had to." Her grandmother smiled sadly. "Fairness is not given, child. It's claimed, with patience and proof." Amara looked up, her eyes red. "How do I prove something when everyone's already chosen what to believe?" Nana paused, then said softly, "You start by believing in yourself. Because the moment you stop doing that, they win." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made her flinch. Her mind replayed the fight, the taunts, the fear, the lies. The world seemed stacked against her. Then her phone buzzed. A message, unknown number again. "Didn't expect this, did you? Should have stayed quiet." Her hands trembled. For a moment, she considered blocking the number, but instead she saved it, evidence. Her grandmother's words echoed, "Proof always finds its way." Amara stood and walked to her training mat. The moonlight spilled through the window, casting long shadows. She took a deep breath, focused her stance, and began her routine. Slow strikes, controlled kicks, calm movements. Each motion carried her pain, her anger, her confusion, but also her discipline. She whispered to herself, "They can take my school, my peace, my name, but they can't take who I am." And for the first time since the incident, she felt something return, a small, steady flame of purpose. Tomorrow, she decided, she wouldn't hide. She would fight, not with her fists, but with the truth. What she didn't know was that help was already on the way. Someone had seen what really happened behind the gym, and soon everything would change. The next morning, Amara walked through the school, gates like a ghost returning to the world that buried her. Even though she was suspended, she couldn't stay away. Something inside her refused to hide anymore. The hallways buzzed with gossip. Students glanced, whispered, scrolled through their phones. The same videos played on repeat, edited, cropped, twisted. Every replay turned her into the villain they wanted her to be. She reached her locker to find the word "freak" written in red marker across it. Her stomach clenched, but she didn't react. She simply wiped it with a napkin, slow and calm, like she'd been taught in every dojo lesson. Never give your enemy your emotions. Then a voice behind her said softly, "You shouldn't be here." Amara turned. It was Mia, a quiet girl from her literature class, pale, nervous, always keeping to herself. Amara's eyes narrowed. "Why? Afraid I'll cause trouble again?" Mia shook her head quickly. "No, I mean because you're suspended. But also," she hesitated, looking around, "because I saw what really happened that day." Amara froze. "You what?" Mia lowered her voice. "I was behind the gym recording TikToks. I didn't mean to see anything, but I caught everything on video. The way they threw things at you. The way you told them to stop. How they hit you first." Amara's heart raced. "Do you still have it?" Mia nodded, her fingers trembling as she held up her phone. "I didn't post it. I was scared. But after what they've been saying, I can't keep quiet anymore." Amara's eyes welled with tears. "You have no idea how much this means." Together, they walked to the principal's office. For the first time, Amara didn't bow her head. She knocked firmly, holding her chin high. Mr. Harris looked up, surprised. "Amara, you're not supposed to be—" "She's here to show you the truth," Mia interrupted. Her voice shaking but brave. The principal frowned but allowed them in. Mia played the video. Silence filled the room as the footage rolled. The boys laughing, throwing paper, then the hit to Amara's head, her falling forward, the shove, the punches that followed. Then her defensive moves, swift, precise but never aggressive until cornered. When the clip ended, Mr. Harris sat back slowly, shame flickering across his face. "Amara," he said softly, "I owe you an apology. I should have listened." Amara didn't smile. She just nodded. "I don't need an apology, sir. I just want my name cleared." He nodded. "It will be." As they left the office, Mia exhaled shakily. "You're brave," she said. Amara looked at her, smiling faintly. "No, Mia, you're brave. You did what others were too afraid to do." That afternoon, the truth spread faster than the lies. The video went viral, this time unedited. The comments turned. Support flooded in from students who had stayed silent before. The bullies were called in for questioning. Suspensions reversed. Apologies demanded. For the first time in weeks, Amara felt the weight lift from her chest. Justice didn't erase the pain, but it gave her something else. Dignity. That night, when she trained again, her strikes were lighter, freer. She was no longer fighting the world. She was reclaiming herself. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't over yet, because the real test wasn't about what others did to her. It was about who she would become after it all. The following week, the school felt different. The hallways, once echoing with whispers and laughter at Amara's expense, had gone quiet when she walked through. People didn't dare make eye contact. Some muttered apologies under their breath. But Amara didn't need them. The truth had already spoken louder than any rumor ever could. The 5 boys who once mocked her now sat in detention, their swagger gone, their arrogance replaced by unease. When she passed the classroom, 2 of them lowered their eyes. Even the teachers looked at her differently, with respect, maybe even guilt. During lunch, Principal Harris called an assembly. The gym was packed. Students filled the bleachers, curious, restless. The bullies stood at the front, forced to face what they'd done. Mr. Harris cleared his throat. "There are moments when we must admit our mistakes, not just as individuals, but as a community. What happened to Amara Johnson was unacceptable." The crowd murmured. Amara sat near the front, her grandmother's words echoing in her head. "Truth always finds its way, even if it crawls." Mr. Harris continued, "We talk about discipline, but we forget about dignity. We talk about fairness, but we ignore courage. Today we correct that." He nodded to the boys. "You have something to say." The ringleader, Brad, stepped forward. His voice was small, unlike the loud mockery it once carried. "Amara, I'm sorry. I don't know what got into us. We thought it was funny. We didn't know you'd—" Amara raised her hand gently, stopping him. "You didn't know I'd fight back?" He looked down. Silence filled the gym. She stood up slowly, facing them. "You hit me, humiliated me, and lied about it. But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because people like you need to understand something. Strength isn't about fists or fear. It's about respect." Every word hit like a strike. Calm, precise, powerful. "I trained in karate my whole life. Not to hurt people, but to protect myself when others forget I'm human. What you did wasn't just bullying, it was racism. It was cruelty. And you laughed because you thought I was powerless." The crowd was silent now. Even the teachers shifted uncomfortably. "But here's what you never understood," she continued. "You didn't break me. You revealed me. You showed me who I am and who I'll never be." Her voice didn't shake once. Brad swallowed hard. "We're sorry," he whispered again. Amara nodded slowly. "Then prove it. Don't say it. Change it." The students broke into quiet applause, then louder, until the gym roared. For the first time, Amara didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. When she left the stage, Mia hugged her tightly. "That was incredible," she said. Amara smiled. "No, that was necessary." Later that night, Amara walked home under the amber sky. She thought about everything. The pain, the humiliation, the justice. It didn't erase the scars, but it gave them meaning. She whispered to herself, "They wanted me to bow. Instead, I rose." And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. A month had passed since the assembly, yet the echoes of that day still lived in the hallways. The red marks once scribbled across. Amara's locker had been cleaned, replaced by something new. Someone had taped a handwritten note there. "Thank you for standing up. You gave us all courage. Anonymous." Amara smiled softly when she saw it. She didn't need to know who wrote it. She already understood. Silence had been broken. In classes, students who once ignored her now nodded respectfully. Teachers used her story as an example when talking about standing up to bullying and racism. The boys who once mocked her were now part of a volunteer group, helping with anti-bullying campaigns under the principal's supervision. Amara hadn't forgiven them completely, but she had made peace. True victory, she'd learned, wasn't making others hurt. It was making them learn. That afternoon, Mr. Harris called her to the auditorium. "We're hosting a special assembly," he said with a proud smile. "And we'd like you to speak." Amara hesitated. "Me? Why?" "Because, Amara, this school needs to hear your voice. From your own lips, not someone else's rumor." Later, standing on the stage once again, Amara faced the entire school. She wasn't the scared, quiet girl anymore. Her back was straight, her voice calm but strong. "I used to think silence kept me safe," she began. "That if I stayed quiet, people would leave me alone. But silence doesn't protect you, it hides you. And when you hide, bullies win." She paused, scanning the crowd. The same faces that once mocked her now listened, truly listened. "I'm not here to talk about karate or fighting. I'm here to talk about power. The kind that comes from standing up for yourself, even when your voice shakes. The kind that says, 'I deserve respect too.'" The room was silent. The kind of silence that meant every word had landed exactly where it should. "Racism," she continued, "isn't just about words or punches. It's about looking at someone and deciding they're less than you. But here's what I've learned. No one gets to decide my worth but me." When she finished, the students rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Mia, sitting in the front row, clapped the loudest, tears shining in her eyes. After the assembly, local news picked up her story. "High school girl turns bullying into a lesson of strength," the headline read. Messages poured in from other students across the state. Kids who'd been bullied. Kids who felt invisible. Kids who saw themselves in Amara. Her grandmother watched the news with quiet pride. "See, child," she said, touching Amara's cheek. "What they meant for harm, you turned into light." That night, Amara stood before her mirror in her karate uniform, the black belt tied neatly around her waist. She bowed deeply, not to the mirror, but to herself. She whispered, "You did it. You stayed true." Outside, the night sky shimmered with stars, calm, endless, strong. And for the first time, Amara didn't feel like a survivor. She felt like a leader. The girl they tried to break had become the lesson they would never forget.